Once there was a man who was married to a lady called Elvira, and Elvira had a golden arm. It was solid, shining gold. It ran from her shoulder right down to her fingers. Elvira was very proud of her golden arm, so proud that before she went to sleep at night, she would say to her husband, "If I happen to die, promise me you'll bury me with my golden arm." And he always said he would. Night after night she would ask him, and night after night he would promise. And one night, Elvira died, and the husband buried her just as he had promised, with her golden arm. And life went on for the husband. He was lonely, naturally. He had his work on the farm, he had his friends, but things weren't the same. He couldn't seem to pay attention to his work, and things went from bad to worse. And little by little, he sold the farm animals, then the carts, then the barn. And lying in bed one night, he began to think about Elvira and her golden arm. He thought about what he could do with all that gold, and it seemed a shame that Elvira's arm was buried deep in the ground. And the more he thought, the more he had to have that arm. But he had promised Elvira, and yet he needed the gold in her golden arm. At midnight he got out of bed, dressed in his warmest clothes because it was bitter cold outside. He took his lantern and a shovel. There was no moon, and he walked in the black night to Elvira's grave, the lantern shining on the road in front of him, making shadows that half scared the man to death. And if he didn't want that golden arm so badly, he would have turned around and gone home, where it was safe and warm. He came to Elvira's grave. The ground was hard because of the cold, but he dug and he dug. The hole got deeper and deeper. The night became colder and colder. And he finally reached Elvira's coffin. He opened the coffin, reached in, and took the golden arm. He covered up the coffin and fixed the earth around the grave so that no one would know what had been done. It began to snow and hail, and the wind got louder and louder as the man started back for home with the golden arm under his coat. He lit a fire, warmed himself, and looked around for some place to hide the golden arm. The only place that was safe, he thought, was under the covers of his bed. He jumped into bed and tried to keep warm, but the golden arm was cold, very cold, and the man shivered and shook. He tried to sleep, but somehow he couldn't. He tried to close his eyes, but he was afraid to keep them shut. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the wind that was keeping him awake, because it got louder and louder, and then he heard a voice in the wind. It was calling, "Where is my golden arm?" Imagination, the man thought. It had to be, because it couldn't be anything else. But he pulled the covers over his head. He didn't want to hear the sound, or was it a voice? What was it saying? "Where is my golden arm?" He got out of bed to make sure. He looked out towards the road. He could hardly see it from his window. It was so dark out, but the wind carried a voice saying, "Where is my golden arm?" He went to the door to listen, to be sure, and he heard it. "Where is my golden arm?" And he looked into the cellar, and the voice called to him, "Where is my golden arm?" And the man shook and shivered, and to be safe, he went back to bed, and he still heard the voice coming from all around him, from the windows, under the door, under the bed, from the closet, and it cried and called and howled, "Where is my golden arm?" And then he saw it. "Where is my golden arm?" At the foot of his bed. And it jumped right at him. "You've got it!" They say that whenever the wind howls late at night, that it's Elvira coming to find her golden arm. Do you have it?
There are lots of places in the world, all different, some strange. But there's one thing every country has: people and ghosts. And this is a story about a man who played a guitar in a city called Paramaribo in Suriname, which is in Dutch Guiana, which is in South America, which is in the Southern Hemisphere, which is on this world, which has many strange things on it. Now this man in Paramaribo played a guitar, and he played it very well. He would play it in the streets, and the people liked it so much they would pay just to hear him play. He was probably the best guitar player in the whole country. Whenever anyone gave a party, they would ask the man to come and play. He played better than he had ever played before, and he played until it was very, very late. And when the party was over, he walked home. It was a very dark night, and he played the guitar as he walked. He played softly to keep his mind off the dark, dark night. There was a sound from the bushes behind him. He turned and saw a man he had never seen before. "That is a very good guitar," the man told him. "I wonder if you would let me play it." Well, it was dark. The man was a stranger, and the guitar player was all alone. So he said, "Of course," and he gave the man the guitar. The stranger played better than even the man. He played it so well that the guitar was amazed. And when the stranger was finished playing, the man told him that he had never heard better playing in his whole life. "Naturally," the stranger said, "I was a guitar player before I died." And the guitar player ran. And the stranger ran after him, calling, "Hey, you forgot your guitar." "Keep it," the guitar player yelled, and he ran. And the stranger ran after him. "Your guitar!" he kept calling. And the guitar player ran faster and faster. And the stranger ran faster and faster until the guitar player ran into his own house and slammed the door, lit all the lights, and pulled down all the shades, and then began to wonder if he had really seen what he thought he had seen. Was there really a stranger who had played his guitar? Of course not, he thought to himself. It's all a dream. When he looked for his guitar, it wasn't there. I must have left it at the party, he thought to himself, and finally fell asleep. The next morning, he opened his door to go back to the rich man's house for his guitar. And there, on the doorstep, was the guitar. "Here's your guitar," a voice said. And the man never played his guitar again.
There are all kinds of scary things that live in the world. Ghosts, vampires, werewolves, any number of things. And then there are bogarts. They don't make any special sort of sound. They just... And if you really want to know if there's a bogart around, do you really want to know? Well, any sound that is not... is a bogart. Bogarts live mostly in England. Mostly. They could live in your house, maybe, but mostly in England. Once there was a farmer and his wife, and they had a bogart. How did they know? It's hard not to know. A bogart is something nobody wants to have around. They're an awful lot of trouble. Late at night, they move around the house. And what they do is... they pull the covers off of people. They knock on doors. And when the farmer would get out of bed to see who was there was no one. Sometimes the bogart would find new ways to get people out of bed. And the farmer's wife would get up to see if the children were all right. Of course they were. Just sleeping peacefully without blankets, because the bogart pulled them off. The farmer and his wife and his children were getting pretty annoyed. Sometimes late at night, the farmer would stand in the middle of the living room and try to talk to the bogart, to ask him or her or it to leave. But there was never any answer, and the farmer would shrug and go to bed. And then the bogart would answer in his own peculiar way. It would tap on the windows. It would roll heavy balls across the ceiling. It would slide down the stairs. And it would slide up the stairs. And one night, because everyone, the farmer, his wife, and all the children, tried talking to the bogart, asking it to please go away. Please let them have a night's rest for once. Please find somebody else to bother. The bogart answered them. No, it didn't talk. They don't talk except when it's really absolutely necessary. What the bogart did was this. The farmer and his wife and all their children were mad. Very mad. And they decided once and for all they wouldn't pay attention to the bogart. When it pulled off their covers, they pulled them back on. When it woke them at night, they rolled over and pretended to go back to sleep. And when the bogart broke things, they just cleaned up as though absolutely nothing had happened. The bogart began to think that the family didn't like him, or her, or it. And it began to be very helpful. It washed the dishes, sometimes. And because it was what it was, it threw a dish every once in a while. It collected the eggs from the chickens. But being a bogart, every other egg would somehow drop or break. It milked the cows and fed the horses. But a bogart is always a bogart. So, it tied the horses' tails to the cows' tails and let them loose in the barnyard. The farmer was very mad. He had a lot of fixing up to do. The farmer's wife was annoyed. She had a lot of cleaning up to do. And the children were mad. They had a lot of helping to do. The only happy thing around the farm was the bogart. So happy that he made the cold water in the tub run hot, and the hot water run cold, and went back to all his old tricks. There was only one thing to do. The farmer told his family that if they couldn't get rid of the bogart one way, they'd do it another. They'd move. Well, did you ever try to move with a bogart in the house? When one trunk was packed and everybody was busy moving the piano, the bogart emptied the trunk, and when everyone went back in to repack the trunk, they'd find the piano had somehow been put out in the barn. It was very hard, but finally the day arrived, and everything was ready to go. All the neighbors wished them good luck, and the farmer said he was happy to be going. He was getting away from the bogart at last. Everyone was in the car, and they were off to their new farm, free at last. And then they heard a voice.
Well, here we go. At last. We're off.
Said the bogart.